Welcome to the England pod. It finished in Bratislava. England 2, Netherlands 1. Lee Carsley's under-21s are in the final again. They are back in the final of the under-21 Euros. And Ali Maxwell, you were there in person to see it. How are you feeling, mate?
Hello, David. I feel fantastic. This feels a lot like this time last year, approximately 11 and a half months ago, when the same scoreline took place in Dortmund between our men's senior team and the Dutch men's senior team. It feels fantastic for so many reasons, and it's impossible to explain them all in one answer. But hopefully we might be able to massage some of my feelings out across the course of this short reaction pod. I'm absolutely buzzing, mate. It's really great that the under-21s have made the finals of the Euros. Let's start there. Let's not worry about anything to do with any frivolous nature, anything anyone may have seen on terrestrial TV. It's brilliant we've made the final, mate, and we played really well and we deserve to win.
Well, come on. Look, I mean, I barely needed to ask you the question, how are you feeling? Because as you've alluded to there, and we are going to talk about it now, is seconds after Harvey Elliott's brilliant winner, and we'll talk about that goal in detail later, because what a goal it was. I was watching it, and my girlfriend had just come home, and we were talking about her day, and she was telling me a few things, and I had half an eye on the game, and I was talking, and then as soon as I was punched the air, the goal's gone in. Yes, go on, boys, well done. And then my jaw just hit the floor, and like even she like just stopped talking and was laughing and was like, oh my god, that's Ali. Ali, and you were there with Charlie as well, and just sent like slap bang in the middle of the screen on Channel 4, giving it the big one, flicking the V's at the Dutch. Come on, boys, come on. That is worth the price of the trip alone.
Legally, I want to say two things. Firstly, that could have been anyone. And a lot of people have bought a Not the Top 20 podcast branded cap, so it doesn't have to have been me. And secondly, I could have been flicking the V's at anyone, David. There was no evidence from that shot who was on the receiving end. Where do I start really? In the moment, Charlie, our social supremo, who isn't seen or heard so far on the England pod, but I want everyone listening or watching to know that he is just like the biggest part of the team basically, and is doing so much for us and so much good stuff, and was the driver behind coming out here, because he's the one that had the vision that we would make it to the final, where many people didn't after that group stage. We've had an amazing day, let's be honest, in Bratislava. I arrived at 2ish. We've been on the beers. It's a really cool city. They always are. Like, this is why I love coming to England under-21s tournaments. This is the 4th tournament in the last 5 that I've been to. The one that I missed was during COVID, where travel would have been literally illegal and possibly impossible. And it's really fun. And it's different. It's not like supporting England at a major tournament. And I don't want to sell it as being like that. The atmosphere in the ground, for example, is nothing like it would be for our game last summer in Dortmund. But that's the point. I'm not going to sit on my hands. That's not me, unfortunately. That's not how I've been brought up. And that's a reflection of, I want to get into it. Like, that's why we're doing this. And I love, unironically and not for effect, Carsley. I love this team. I like supporting England teams of whatever level. And it feels great to beat the Dutch as well. And, you know, we've won 2-1. We gave away a ridiculous goal to equalise, which is, you know, this is all building up to what you saw for 1.5 seconds on Channel 4, is that we went ahead deservedly, we looked really comfortable, a mistake saw them level, and as an England fan, you start feeling like, I can't believe this is going to pens, or I can't believe that we're going to mess this up again. And then Elliott goes solo and scores a wonderful goal. It was just, I don't know what else to say. I'm partially embarrassed. I think it's very funny. I got a load of very, very funny messages about it. I'm semi-sober, but not really. So what can I say? I love it. I love it. Put it that way.
Well, let's pause for breath a moment. Give you a chance just to collect your thoughts and have a moment. Let's hear from the other member of the England pod team, George Elliott, who of course has been watching, and he has a few thoughts about the game and the scenes.
Ali Maxwell is in a foreign land. He's had a few beers. He's pretty angry, but he's also euphoric. He's seen England beat the Netherlands 2-1 with a late goal in a Euros semi-final. Is this 2024? No, it's 2025. Unbelievable stuff. Like, first of all, let's start with the fact that the 3-star players, or the 3-star men of tonight's win, were Elliott Anderson, Harvey Elliott, and Ali Maxwell, who stole the show in the celebrations, showing immense passion that mirrored the passion that we've seen from the players throughout the tournament. Incredible from Ali, wearing his Not the Top 20 cap. I, like everybody else listening to this, had that moment of celebrating the goal and being like, oh my God, what have I just seen? And what a performance. A brilliant second half performance. Like 2 unbelievable finishes from Elliott, who now has 4 goals for the tournament. He's only 1 behind the leader for the top goal scorer at time of recording, ahead of the Germany semi. His scoring record for England under 21s is incredible. It feels like there are massive comparisons to be made with him and Curtis Jones, who came to the last Euros, kind of much maligned Liverpool player, someone who had shown a lot of promise as a youth player, but maybe hadn't delivered necessarily, and people were starting to write him off. And maybe this tournament's going to have a similar effect on Elliott's career, because but we can see here what a creative force he can be, and also a goal scorer too. A word for Elliott Anderson, who yet again, basically whenever he's been on the pitch at the Euros this summer, whether it's as a starter or when he comes on as a sub, is just probably the best player on the pitch. I think there's a lot of talk about England needing a holding midfield player. He's a very different player to the one that I saw make his name at Bristol Rovers, where he was an attacking kind of goal threat midfielder, but he is so robust, so good and quick in possession, and feels to me like he could be, positionally sound enough to be that guy. And I think it's absolutely imperative. Like, I'm hoping that Thomas Tuchel, despite his very short contract to England, is watching these games and is looking at Anderson and thinking that he could be someone that could be of use in America. Just brilliant. Jealous I'm not there with Ali. Feel for Dave, who could have been there. But bring on Saturday night, and given that me and Ali are meant to be going on a family holiday with my family and his family, if he decides to stay out in Bratislava, I'm going to be pretty upset.
Amazing voice note from an amazing guy. Dave, quick one from me. To what extent are you buying into this Ali stitched Dave up narrative? Because I've apologised to you in the flesh. I've apologised to you virtually. George keeps banging on about it. I don't know what to say, but I do genuinely feel quite bad that you're not here in an Airbnb with a Heineken can, having had almost exclusively Czech lager, if you're interested today. I feel quite bad.
A bit of Litavel or something, maybe.
Nothing like that.
I'm fine with it. Yeah, no stitch-ups whatsoever. Circumstances have intervened and meant that I couldn't be there this week, and I would have loved to have been there. I've been so jealous of you and Charlie all day, all the stuff you've been posting from the various establishments that you've been visiting in Slovakia, with nice food, nice beer, just soaking up the sun, having a lovely day, and this has capped it all off. Like, it's, all well and good going on these trips and having a nice time, but if you don't actually see the team win and have a good performance and get what you want from the football, it does obviously take the shine off it. So it's great that the boys have actually got the job done today, and actually saying got the job done is doing them a disservice, because they played really well. 2-1 might seem like a close scoreline, and yes, there was a moment towards the end of the game after we conceded that somewhat unfortunate equaliser. You think, oh God, maybe this is the time when, Lee Carsley's special sauce runs out. But no, the quality shined through. The goal from match winner Harvey Elliott was superb. I mean, the first goal was really good, with great combination play from Alex Scott, from Elliott Anderson, from Amari Hutchinson, and then Anderson again playing Harvey Elliott through. Great first touch, great second touch, brilliant finish on his weaker foot. Joe Cole and Jermaine Defoe on Channel 4 were very complimentary about the technique and about everything he did there. But the second goal was even better. And yes, Joe Cole did say exactly what you expect him to say in this moment. Can you guess what it was?
Cometh the hour, cometh the man.
No. If Lionel Messi does that, we would be talking about it.
You know what? I tell you what, between 2009 and 2012, I saw Messi score that exact goal at least 3 times.
It was very Messi-esque, actually. Like, genuinely, just in terms of the movement, the body shape, jinking past players, and that sort of buried, hard finish, accurate and powerful.
We watched the goal back. We watched the goal back in the taxi back to the Airbnb. and he picked it up, and I said, he's going all the way from here. I didn't really appreciate it at the time, and I think that's sometimes the difference between being in the stadium and only getting to see it once, and sometimes through half open eyes. It was incredible solo goal, and the mad thing about Elliott's performance is he could have scored 3 or 4, and normally I roll my eyes at stuff like that, but like 2 fabulous saves in the first half from Elliott efforts, which were, the first one was put on a plate for him. The second one involved him with some really good feet inside the box to kind of get the shot off. It was a virtuoso performance from the guy who is the most capped player in this squad, the oldest player in this squad. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm confident in saying the most experienced at club level player in this squad. He's already got over 100, maybe 150 games for Liverpool, mainly off the bench, sure, but he carries himself like a senior player. He's also got a swagger about him that I saw tonight that I hadn't necessarily understood previously, where like the best way of describing it is, Dave, at the end of the game, Charlie and I, very overexcited, we went down to the front behind the goal. We weren't going to beg for shirts, but we would have loved the players to come over and have a little clap and to receive our acclaim, right? Yeah. And they stood 25 yards from goal, well away from us, sipping water because they were absolutely parched. And the only person that showed any desire to lap up any adulation was Harvey Elliott, and he did about 4 different turn around the ground, clap various people. Like, I don't want to mug him off, but there wasn't a huge vibe tonight in the ground. It was mostly Slovakians and their kids. There wasn't a huge pro-England clan altogether. But Elliott rightly knew that he had put in a sensational match-winning performance and wanted some praise for it, which I can't begrudge him. I must admit, I can't begrudge him.
He has actually played 147 appearances for Liverpool, so you were just a little bit off there, not far off though. And he did the interview after the game with Channel 4, and Christ, he looked dead. Honestly, he looked knackered, like dark rings around his eyes. I was wondering, like, has he been crying, or is he just incredibly dehydrated and sweaty and knackered? He also said that after the first goal, when he sort of did a botched a knee slide, a celebration, that he has his knee, I quote, bloody hurts. So let's hope that that's nothing too serious for the.
Yeah, we thought he was coming off. It was very clear he was in a lot of discomfort, and we thought he was coming off. And as ever, and you'll appreciate this, trying to predict Carsley's subs is just hilarious, because even if you know who's coming on, invariably you're not going to get the guys coming off right, and that's the beauty of Carsball.
Exactly. But yeah, an amazing performance from Elliott, but he wasn't the only player out there today who had a great performance. As George said there, Elliott Anderson, fantastic game, back in the starting lineup after being benched, although he obviously came on and made a contribution against Spain, but back in the team today and just was superb. Got the assist for Elliott's first, but was just had so much energy and presence in midfield in a game that would have been very hard to have energy because it looked so hot. I mean, you were there. I'm sure you can tell us like what the conditions were like on the ground. But obviously there was drinks breaks. The pressing and the intensity and the energy from England was noticeably just a bit lower than against Spain. It was a different sort of game. The pace of it was slower. But Anderson and Alex Scott as well were just so combative and just so good in the midfield.
I'm glad you mentioned Scott there, because agree with everything you say about Anderson, but I'm a huge Alex Scott fan, and Charlie and I have been talking about, what happens next with him, because he's been at Bournemouth for 2 years now. He's only played about 40 Premier League games, a lot of injuries in there. He turns 22 in August, so he's still, got so many years to develop, and I think he's got so much potential, and I think he appears to have developed quite a lot even in the last 2 years, and looks very comfortable at this level. As a ball winner, he's so good on the ball, and you can say the exact same thing about Anderson. I actually think they are relatively similar players, and it's interesting that in a team where we are playing with 2 central midfielders very specifically, and then 4 attackers in front of them, it's not a 4-3-3, it's very much those two. They've got a lot of work to do in there, with and without the ball. With the ball drifting wide and combining with fullbacks, coming deep to combine with centre-backs, trying to support attacks as well from deep. Like, it is, on the ball, a really, really difficult job with a lot of responsibility. And without the ball, exactly the same. Like, the front four, and Stansfield's very keen to press. The others, I would say, Elliott, McAtee, Hutchinson, are semi-interested in pressing. And frankly, on a hot day like today, it's probably not worthwhile anyway. But that means that Scott and Anderson have to do a really good job to make sure that our defence don't get exposed. And I think they did it all really well. I was really, really proud of both of them. I think Anderson potentially stands out a tiny bit more, partly because physically he is just so clearly a serious specimen as a central midfielder at this age group. And you know, it's easy to forget sometimes watching under-21 football that when these guys play in the Premier League against Man City's midfield, the guys that look the biggest here often don't look the biggest in Premier League games. So there's challenges for both of those guys, but I really think, you know, in terms of winners of the tournament for England, Scott and Anderson have to be right up there for me, and loved both of their performances tonight.
Well, we saw it at St George's Park. That, you know, we said on the episode a few weeks ago when we wanted to talk to Scott and to Anderson. Anderson wasn't keen, and Alex Scott dragged him over, and then they had a bit of fun with us. There's clearly a bit of a bond between them. They were hugging at the end as well and sharing a few words on the pitch. Like, it's great to see their partnership. They've clearly got something good going there. And you're right about Anderson, and physically, like, standing next to him at St George's, he's just got muscle. He's not the tallest, but he's got really meaty. But lean, you know, just a specimen, as you say. Let's keep going through the team, Ali. Like, we've talked about Anderson, we've talked about Elliott, we've talked a little bit about Alex Scott, but there are plenty more good performances to pick out tonight. I mean, everyone was great, really. I mean, apart from, you know, James McAtee probably didn't have a game that he'll be particularly happy with. Don't think he was amazing. Joe Hart was a bit critical of him on co-commentary, but some of the positive performances out there for England tonight. I mean, I thought Hutchinson was really good again, got a lot of the ball for us and was always a threat, and did have a little bit, a little part to play in that first goal as well.
Well, Hutchinson was absolutely electric for the first 20-25 minutes. Completely rinsed their fullback a number of times. They doubled up on him. That didn't matter. He was good on the break. He was good receiving the ball to feet, you know, in kind of slower possession and facing up his defender and beating him and creating something from there. I honestly, for 20-25 minutes, it was so impressive, particularly because he's one of those players who's a little lefty, who you assume would prefer to be coming in from the right-hand side. And indeed, that's where we've seen him cause a lot of damage for Ipswich over the last 2 seasons. But he adapted really well to playing a kind of more traditional left wing role. You know, the whole idea with Hinchelwood playing left back and tucking in is that, you know, you open up the passing lane and Hutchinson can go 1v1. And for half an hour, he did more than you'd expect your winger to do. And then they kind of closed him down. And I think it's just a good reflection of that position and what we're asking guys to do. We can hark back to the senior team as well here. We've talked about it with Tuchel. He's been incredibly clear that he wants his wingers to get the ball and dribble against their fullback. And we've talked about the fact that, like, it's kind of a lonely position because it's incredibly easy to see whether you're doing well or badly if you are constantly dribbling at a fullback. It's very easy to judge whether you're doing your job or not. But it's really hard. Like, defenders are good and they're big and they're strong and they use their body. And if you're Hutchinson and you're a bit short, it's, you know, you have to be excellent to beat a man. And he did it time and time again. I think that was really, really impressive, but he did fade a little bit. And I think, is it fair to say, you know, I'm absolutely buzzing, I want to make that clear, but I think it's fair to say that two things can be true. I think we were the better side for sure. I didn't think the Dutch team had a huge amount about them, exactly the same as I felt with the senior team last summer. If I'm honest, I'm a little worried about Dutch football and their identity, because we hear a lot about the Dutch football identity, and I sort of feel like they might be struggling a little bit with an identity crisis. I won't worry about that, Dave, but I will bring it up. We were certainly the better side, but I don't want to go over the top and say we were electric, we were electrifying, because to your point, talking about the heat, talking about the temperature, talking about its effect on the game, I don't think is very sexy content, if I'm honest. And we are going to have to think about this and talk about this a lot next summer at the World Cup in North America, in the States and in Mexico and in Canada. And when you're on the ground, it's probably boring to hear because you weren't there, but you can see it, you can feel it. You are literally sitting there feeling the heat yourself, sitting on your ass. And then you're watching these guys sprint around. And it's not a surprise that they can only do it in short bursts. And it's not a surprise that just because they dominate the first 15 minutes doesn't mean they dominate the whole first half. And I think you just have to acknowledge that. I do worry genuinely that English teams struggle more than some with heat. And I do worry about that for next summer. There was a moment late on in the first half where a Dutch player went down injured. It was not a planned drinks break, which we'd already had. But at that point, every England player sprinted to the touchline to have some water, and almost none of the Dutch players did, which suggested that they were feeling fine in the heat and we were really struggling with it. At least that's how I took it. So I think these are just like little things. They're not that important, but they're little notes from the ground. I think our players, apart from the three that we've mentioned, Anderson and Scott overall, Elliott the match winner, and a flash of Hutchinson, I think they all played fine individually and pretty well as a unit. And the only goal we conceded was a bit of a freak goal, let's be honest. And Beadle made maybe 2 other saves, relatively comfy. I think we had 9 shots inside the box to their 2. We were the better side and we won the game. And it's just pleasing to be able to say that, because maybe it's, England fan inferiority complex, but I feel like often we're the better side and we don't win. So I'm just very happy right now.
I thought the defence did well today as well. There were spells where they were under a bit of pressure. They had to stick to it. They had to make clearances, make blocks, not just the defenders, the midfielders. Everyone chipped in with that side of things. Hinshelwood and Livramento both won 100% of their tackles. There were, Cresswell was very good with his aerial. Jules won a lot in the air.
Yeah.
I think, he'll be disappointed with the goal. He tries to control it, gets it wrong. That then gives Noah Ohio the opportunity to do what he did, and he did it really, really well. That is a fantastic finish. That is literally, you've got no margin for error there. It's got to go in the exact spot that it went in. Yes, Beadle, it's one of those where a goalkeeper chasing back towards his own goal and diving in despair as it goes past him on the surface might look like a goalkeeper error, but Joe Hart said on CoCom was like, and no one knows better than him, like, the keeper's in the position that he should be in because he's expecting the defender to control that and pass it back to him, and then that happens. So fair play. Beadle, I thought, was good at claiming stuff, like, especially in the dying minutes when, sometimes you might punch or whatever, but no, he came for stuff, he caught stuff, and he seemed composed in the moments that he had to be composed. And, I think it was a good team performance today. The right team won, the best team won. We're growing into this tournament. We're getting better with each game, it seems to me. And we go into the final, we're going to play either France or Germany. We've already lost to the Germans, but if we do play the Germans, it will be a different game. I'm sure of that. France do look good as well. Obviously got a lot of talented young players as well. So whoever we play isn't going to be easy. But Lee Carsley was speaking to Channel 4 after the game, so is Harvey Elliott, as we've said, so is James Beadle. They all seem confident, they all seem ready. Carsley's been here before. Some of the players have been here before. I'm excited. We've got a real opportunity to win the Euros again.
Yeah, I think so. And Charlie asked who I would rather play in the final, and being honest, I'm not an expert on the individual qualities and deficiencies of those two teams, Germany and France. Instinctively, I said Germany because I just like the idea of beating the Germans in the final, having already lost them in the group stage, among other reasons. When it comes to the French, I'll be honest, there's a part of me that thinks that they, and possibly there's a similarity with us overall, tend to seem to have a squad on paper that seems absurdly talented, but potentially doesn't always put it together in terms of team performances. So put it this way, Dave, I'll be taking the positives whoever wins the semi-final, which has just started as we record. But I think I want to just make a point about Carsley and about England and about the England under-21s. And that is that we have seen quite a lot of tweets as if they matter hugely. that say, from people that say, I always wanted Carsley to get it full time after his 6-game interim spell. And without litigating whether that's true or not, whether that's just recency bias or forgetting the past, I don't know. What I would say about Carsley is he has been, I think, about as clear as anyone could possibly be about what he enjoys doing, how he enjoys working, and the jobs that he wants to do. When George asked him about managing England, the senior team, he said, I want to do the best job that I'm asked to do. He said he enjoyed working with the players, and some really interesting stuff about that period, but this is not a guy that has is trying to play the game in terms of jostling for position, right, when it comes to being the England manager. And some would say, well, he's just a company man, he doesn't want to rock the boat. I honestly believe, based on now, it's been about 10 years since Lee Carsley was at Brentford, and he took charge of the team after a manager was sacked, and he was really excellent, and the team looked great. And guess what? We heard the players love working for him, and he's a great guy, and tactically he's sharp, and coaching-wise he's sharp. And he said, I don't want to be the manager. I'm not interested in being the first-team manager. And though he has personal reasons for that, which I don't particularly know or I'm confident going into, I think we should look at this as, instead of constantly going, should Carsley be the England manager because look what he's done with the under-21s, we should be so grateful and feel very fortunate that he is our under-21s manager, because it's absolutely clear, if you remove the senior team from any part of this conversation, it could not be clearer that he is a magnificent manager of the England under-21s. And the last manager that we had was not that, definitively. And I'm not normally that strong in saying it, but I watched that team in multiple tournaments, and I feel very confident in saying, whatever the talent pool, whatever the group of players he had to work with, the previous manager was very clearly not that, and now we have someone that very clearly is excellent. And I would love us to appreciate that, and try and appreciate that having a really good under-21s manager is good for English football, and not to constantly go, the under-21s manager's good, isn't he? Maybe he should be the senior team manager. You don't have to make that leap. And I don't think Lee Carsley wants people to make that leap.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's natural in some ways for people to think that, and to see someone doing really well and to think, why couldn't he do better? But we've discussed it at length already, and there were a lot of things that we learned from that 6-game spell that Carsley had in charge in last September, October, November, that I think showed how different a job it is. Just all of a sudden being the England senior men's national team manager, it's not all about the coaching and your tactical nous and all that. There's loads of other stuff that comes with it, and I don't think Carsley really fancies that, and I think he was implicit about that, I would say. I think, if we can be honest. But look, I think it's great. He's great that we've got him. It's great to see him doing well. It was nice to see a little smile from him at the end when Beadle went up and caught the ball right at the end when we gave away a bit of a silly corner, which I was a bit worried about. But Beadle catches it, and then it cuts to Carsley, who's in his now trademark sort of Bielsa-esque crouching position in the technical area. A little smile.
Was he on the iPad? Or was the
no
iPad back
this time.
That's good.
A little smile came across his face because he knew the job was done, and he knows that his team are in the final and they've got the opportunity to go back to back, which would be an amazing achievement if we can do it. And as we've said, it's definitely not going to be easy, but this group of players, whoever starts the game and whichever players come off the bench, I'm confident that they're going to go really close. Like, you might not win. It's one game of football. Things happen. You might not win. You might be beaten by a better team on the day. You might get unlucky, whatever. But I've been encouraged by the last 2 games and how they've grown into this tournament. And, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. What a game we've got ahead of us on Saturday evening. And I wonder whether people listening to this pod or England fans in general across the country might fancy doing a Maxwell, getting onto Sky Scanner and getting yourself out there and just enjoying it and taking it in and getting behind the lads.
I can only explain it in the way that I feel, and I know that I am somewhat unusual in that I have been to 4 out of the last 5 under-21s tournaments. It might not be for everyone, and to start with, I want to say that it's not like following England at a major tournament in terms of the senior team. You're not going to be in squares with 20,000 England fans. It's not going to be like that. But what you do get is, if you're into travelling, you get to travel somewhere pretty fun. Bratislava, I've only been here for about 4 hours before the game, but there's a lot to love. You get to generally go to stadiums that are outside of the kind of big ones, and therefore tick a few of those off. It's a different atmosphere, but for a certain person, it's an amazing atmosphere. And we want to make the point, and I hope we do with these podcasts, with these videos, that there's loads to be interested about if you're an English football fan, no matter who you support at club level. It doesn't just have to be the senior team. There is loads to buy into. There is loads to be interested in. The conversations that we have about the young players and their pathways are a bit different to the conversations you have about players at club level and transfers and who's good enough to play for X team, whatever. That I still think if you're a pure football fan, there's tons of interest watching this level of football, watching the England under-21s. And as someone who's been doing it for coming up to 10 years now, you get that kind of Glastonbury thing, Dave, where you go, I saw Elliott Anderson play in Bratislava in 2025, and in 2032 we win the Euros with Elliott Anderson, the star man, winning the player of the tournament, and you have that lovely air of satisfaction. So yeah, it's a Saturday. The other important thing to say is, don't just Skyscanner flights to Bratislava. Vienna is 40 minutes away in a taxi, or an hour away in a bus, or an hour and a half away on a train, rather. There are multiple ways of getting here. There are multiple excellent watering holes, which I can furnish you the details if you only ask on our DMs. And I would love it if someone listening to this feels the urge to use a free weekend to come and cheer England over the line in the final, just like we did in the gangway after Harvey Elliott's winner tonight.
Big time. I mean, yeah, get out there if you can. You'll have a great time. Maybe you'll be at Glastonbury this weekend. Would you really, if deep down, does anyone listening really want to be watching Neil Young rather than watching the England under-21s in the Euros final? You know, I'm not going to say anything more, but I know which one I'd prefer. But you and George won't be at Glastonbury. Ali, you're coming back from Bratislava, so George need have no fear there. You'll be together watching the game on Saturday. I'll be watching it. I hope everyone listening is going to be watching it as well. Let's get behind the England under-21s. Let's get behind Carsley and the boys. Let's hope we can go back-to-back and win our second consecutive under-21s Euros. We're all England all the time. We'll see you in a few days. Come on, England!